Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Joe Stunner Boxing. How are you doing today? I'm doing well. Hope you are too. If you're regular to the channel, yesterday you may have seen that I did a video on Frank Warren and how his reports of his demise were perhaps a little premature. He's obviously not the force he once was, but as I said, there's life in the old litigator yet, and he's sort of certainly remaining more relevant than certain others, Don King being the obvious example, how he's fallen. But someone left a comment underneath that video, and they said, why don't you do a video on the Cartel and Mickey Duff and Mike Barrett and, you know, Jarvis Astaire and Terry Lawless, etc., etc. And yeah, it's a good idea, but to do a video on the whole Cartel would be very long. You know, you could probably bunny on for about an hour. You know what I'm like. So I thought what I'd do is I'd do a video on Mickey Duff, and I'd touch on the Cartel, because I think Duff was he was the face of the Cartel, if you know what I mean. He was and he was so much more than just a promoter. He was a matchmaker. He worked extensively in America. He had a great deal of respect in the United States as a matchmaker, as a promoter. We know about his exploits there. He had many world champions. So yeah, I'll say a few words about Mickey Duff. I haven't done a lot of research. It's all coming out of the old bunts because of all these books I've read for God knows how many decades, more than I care to remember. But basically, Mickey Duff, born in 1929, and in the 1930s, the rise of Nazism and Hitler and all the fascism. His family ended up in England. They fled the Nazis. He was born Monek Prager, I think his name was, and he's from Poland originally. I want to say Krakow, but I may not have that right. I think it was a village near Krakow, but anyway. So the war, you get the war, and then right at the end of the war, as the war's just ended, young Mickey Duff turns professional, and he has a pro career which doesn't last long. Only I think three years and 3-4 months, and he wins 33 fights out of 46, I think it was, because he had 4 draws and 9 defeats, and he never fought for a title, and he never fought more than an 8-rounder, which is very interesting. I did check that bit out on BoxRec to make sure I got the figures exactly right. And of the 39 wins, I think only 4 were by knockout or stoppage. But of his 9 defeats, he was never stopped. And okay, you know, you've got to take into consideration the fact he never fought more than an 8-rounder. But it does suggest that he was a light puncher with a pretty good jaw. And he fought low-levelish guys. I don't think he fought anyone of any real domestic note. But he had a very brief pro career, but it was successful. You know, he made a few quid here and there, and he got to know the trade. He got to know boxing. He got to know the ins and outs of it, met people and networked and so on, as we all do, regardless of what, you know, of what field we're in. Now, to talk about the promotional side of things, at the time, prior to the Cartel, Mickey picking up the mantle, who misses, a poet and didn't know it, of a boxing promoter. British boxing was ruled by a guy called Jack Solomons, and Solomons really, I mean, it really was a monopoly. You know, Solomons. If you wanted any kind of success in boxing, you had to go through Solomons, and Solomons had all sorts of, you know, big fights. The one that always sticks in my mind was Sugar Ray Robinson coming to England and getting beaten by Randolph Turpin, 15-round decision. That was probably Solomon's, the biggest scalp, if you like. But Solomon's was the man. No one else got a look in. And along comes Mickey Duff with all the people that he's met along the way. Jarvis Astaire, Mike Barrett. And they basically took over. In a nutshell, they just basically took over. And Solomon's became yesterday's news. Now, it's all very well saying, pretty much like Frank Warren eventually did to Mickey Duff and the Cartel, it's all very well saying, well, Solomon's was a monopoly and thank goodness, here comes the cartel to sort of bring a bit of democracy. No, it was nothing like that, because the cartel, they were all in league with each other, and it became essentially another monopoly. Okay, and so Mickey Duff, he was the face of it. He had an awful lot of boxing knowledge. I remember Teddy Atlas talking about him. This was at least 5 years ago. I saw an interview with Teddy Atlas, and he mentioned Mickey Duff. I think it was when Mickey passed away. Mickey passed away in 2014, I want to say. He had dementia before he passed. But right up until the late 80s, Mickey was relevant in British boxing. I mean, Duke McKenzie was a Duff fighter. A lot of people don't realise Joe Calzaghe began his career, professional career, with Mickey, and then switched to Warren. And then I think he was one of several fighters that actually moved from Mickey Duff to Frank, and that kind of finished Mickey off as a force in boxing. And Mickey had health problems as well. But some of the fighters that Mickey promoted, some of the world champions that Mickey promoted, and they weren't just from England. They certainly had British connections, but they weren't. He had fingers in all sorts of continental pies. So Terry Downs, middleweight champ, Mickey promoted him, or the Cartel promoted him. He was very much involved with Frank Bruno for a long while. John Conte, WBC light heavyweight champ from Liverpool in '74. I think Barry McGuigan had connections after he had the acrimonious breakup with Barney Eastwood. Jim Watt was a Cartel fighter for a while. Charlie Magri, WBC flyweight champ from London. And one of my personal favourites, Lloyd Honeyghan, who of course did that astonishing victory over Donald Curry. What a brilliant victory that was, going up all the way there, and no one gave him a hope in hell. And I remember Mickey being interviewed before that fight and saying, look, Curry will definitely be Lloyd's hardest fight, but what Curry doesn't realise is that Honeyghan will be Donald Curry's hardest fight, and so it proved. And there's that famous picture. I don't know whether you've ever seen it. It always makes me laugh. It's the ring, and at the foot of the picture, you can see Mickey. Is it Mickey laying on top of Lloyd, or the other way around? You just see these two people celebrating, like laying on the canvas. Like, it was on Question of Sport once. Who's this? And the panel were like, "Well, the bloody hell do I know? You can't see anything. Just these two geezers lying on the floor." Because I think one of them jumped in the other one's arms, and they both fell over. And yeah, it was really funny. But yeah, Lloyd Honeyghan, definitely a big Mickey Duff fighter. But also Mickey had, because his reach was so extensive, he had people like Morris Hope. Mo was from Antigua, I think, but fought out of Britain, light middleweight champ. Took a guy the quality of Wilfred Benitez to knock Mo Hope off his perch. John the Beast Mugabe, thunderous puncher from Uganda, because Mickey had real connections in Africa, who gave Hagler, a good old fight in Hagler's penultimate contest. Cornelius Bozer Edwards, and if you know anything about Bozer Edwards, he was involved in some incredible wars in the 70s with people like Bazooka Limon, and I think, did you fight Bobby Chacon? And there was a round robin of these great sort of feathers and super feathers who fought each other, and they fought each other more than once. And Mickey had his fingers in those pies as well. So he really was one of the most respected figures in world boxing, not just British boxing. But in the 90s, the early 90s, it kind of waned a bit, and I think he continued it for a little while as a matchmaker, because his knowledge was just extensive, but his mind was going, basically. And it's a horrible way of putting it, but so yeah, basically, with regard to the others, Mike Levene, Jarvis Astaire, one of those died recently. One of those died only last year. I think it was 97. I can't remember which one was. Was it Levene? I think it was Levene. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. It was either Barrett or Levene, lived to be 97, and they only died last year. But they were more behind the scenes people. and you'd have one guy as a front man who'd be a promoter. You know, it might be Barrett, and then you'd have Duff as a promoter, and Duff would do the matchmaking behind the scenes. But they were all basically in league with each other. And yeah, his position in boxing from the point of view as both a matchmaker and a promoter went from probably mid 50s to early 90s. So he had a good old run, and then Frank Ryan came along, broke up the cartel, and the rest is history. So yeah, Mickey Duff, quite a figure in British boxing. Give him a quick Google. He's probably got a Wikipedia page, or I'm sure there's loads and loads of articles on Mickey, interviews on YouTube. Very interesting character. Not always considered to be the most agreeable of people if you were a fighter regarding money, but then very few promoters are. There are always disputes. I think I read somewhere that Duke McKenzie, who was a 3-belt world belt holder, I think he got paid about $2,000 for one of his world title fights, but he just didn't sell tickets, you know. Brilliant fighter, but didn't sell tickets. But yeah, that's Mickey Duff for you. Just a little thumbnail of Mickey Duff. Do a bit of digging about Mickey. He's an interesting character. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you could subscribe to the channel, I'd be very grateful for that. That'd be fantastic. And yeah, thank you for your time as always. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a good day today. I will speak to you again sometime. Meanwhile, of course, as always, take care of yourself. Bye bye for now.